looking at pictures of Bellevue Hospital on Manhattan's east side. The storm knocked out power. As a patient of being evacuated. On the phone with me now is Alan Aviles. He's the president of New York's Health and Hospitals Corporation, which oversees Bellevue. Mr. Aviles, thank you for joining me.
Good evening, Piers.
Let me lay my cards on the table about this. I find it quite shameful that two of New York's major hospitals have suffered complete power outages, given the fact there have been hurricanes before, from Irene onwards, which have threatened, that they're on the water, these hospitals. It must be an ongoing threat, and that there was a week to prepare for what everybody was saying was the biggest storm New York would ever see. How could this happen?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. There were two hospitals next to one another. One of them, not one of our public hospitals, not Bellevue Hospital, did lose total power. Bellevue Hospital, in fact, has 4 emergency generators up on a high floor that kicked in to power the hospital after we lost Con Ed power. And remember, please, that this is an unprecedented storm based upon the projections from the National Hurricane Center even an hour before the storm hit. The storm surge projections at their highest levels would not have threatened our hospital, which actually sits at a higher elevation than the other hospital on the same block that actually lost total power. So we did have power. The issue was our ability to sustain a huge complex hospital, level 1 trauma center on temporary power that doesn't power all of the systems within the hospital.
Right, but I mean, whichever way you explain this, it doesn't change the fact that you've got hundreds of patients, many critically ill, many mothers with newborn children, all being ferried on Monday night, for example, from NYU into the eye of the worst storm ever. I mean, I can't think of anything worse for a mother with a newborn child than to be ferried down 9 flights of stairs by harassed nurses and then having to go out into a hurricane. And it does beg the question, if this was to happen again next year, would you have a different system that didn't have, for example, pumps with oil in the basement, which then get drowned so much you can't use them? I mean, what are the lessons that get learned here so that mothers who may be coming into these hospitals next year don't have to worry that if there's another hurricane, they're going to be out in the middle of it?
I can't speak for NYU Hospital, which was the hospital that had to evacuate in the face of the storm. Our evacuation occurred afterward. Bellevue is the longest operating hospital in the United States. It has never experienced anything like what we experienced on Sunday and Monday. And bear in mind that there is a balance of risk here. It is not risk-free to transfer patients, many of whom are critically ill, and having to do that as a mass evacuation. Again, you know, the projections in terms of the strength of this hurricane changed very rapidly, but even at its peak did not suggest that the hospital was endangered. We sheltered in place during Hurricane Irene just a year ago, and it did not come remotely close to endangering our hospital. So this is one of these events where it's easy in hindsight to say we should have, but had we actually initiated an evacuation where one of the critically ill patients or patients on ventilators died in the transport, we'd be criticized for doing that. It is not an easy decision to make. The remarkable thing is that we had 725 patients in this hospital when the storm hit. We now have 260 there. All of the critically ill patients have been transferred already. All of them are doing fine. They're safe in other hospitals. We appreciate particularly the National Guard, which has been unbelievable in terms of their help here. We had to have patients carried down as many as 18 flights of stairs. The National Guard did that with special sleds. They were fabulous.
See, here's my problem, though. I'm looking at these pictures, and you have all these people being ferried around. Now I'm looking at Goldman Sachs, which is in downtown on the west side there. They're lit up with full power. You know, I'm seeing the stock exchange reopening. And I'm thinking, why would financial institutions be able to have the kind of power facilities and reserves that allow them to keep going, but hospitals are having to ferry critically ill people all over the city in the middle of this chaos? And the answer has to be, doesn't it, a lack of resource or a lack of planning or a lack of infrastructure?
No, because Piers, as I said, we're on emergency power at Bellevue Hospital. I mean, it's one thing to keep computers going so you can do.
But it's not enough emergency power, clearly, if you're evacuating people.
Right, because hospitals are so much more complex. Absolutely, that is the case. But the fact is,
but isn't it, with respect, sir, with respect, if I may jump in, is it not your job as the president of New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation to think the unthinkable? And isn't this just part of the unthinkable? In other words, a major attack through water, and you're based near the water there, it can hardly be that unthinkable, that has come in and has affected your power system to the extent that you have to evacuate hundreds of people. That is part of your job, isn't it?
Well, you know, it's very easy to make that judgment from a ringside seat, but when you're in the arena and you do have to balance the risks involved in even doing something like an evacuation, as I've said, this has never been experienced here before. We do have backup systems that are quite robust. There are 4 emergency generators that are on the 13th floor. I mean, we still don't know exactly what occurred in terms of outages to many of the electrical circuits that go through a distribution panel, as well as what happened to the fuel pumps, which were, although they were below grade, were encased in sealed enclosure with what are called submarine doors with rubber gaskets and 9 levers.
If I may, let me bring in Michael Moore for a quick reaction here. Michael, what do you think of this?
Well, I mean, you make valid points, but I guess I want to say something in defense of the hospitals.
Sure.
And in the interest of full disclosure, I had a loved one that was in NYU Hospital, and that is an excellent hospital. Just the staff, everybody is just an absolutely wonderful hospital.
But none of this is about the level of care, and right. I know that the staff there, and the nurses and so on, are doing an unbelievable job.
Listen,
I'm talking about the system and the infrastructure.
The infrastructure set up, the reason why those generators and the oil and everything is in the basement to keep it going is because New York does have a history of blackouts, but the blackout doesn't come actually into the hospital from the river. It happens through the Con Ed system, and those generators are put there so that the hospitals, when we have these blackouts or brownouts, the hospitals keep going here, and they have. Nobody has experienced this, as he said before, but this isn't what I want to point out is that when you say it's unprecedented, it may be unprecedented, but when he says it's unprecedented, but it's going to set the precedent because this is what we're going to see from here on out. Unless we're willing to talk, and you said you want to talk about this later, climate change and global warming, that is what's changed here. This is not going to be a freak incident, what happened here in New York and New Jersey this week. We have been seeing crazy weather for the last few years, the drought that took place this summer, the thing that's going to happen next.
Hold this thought, Michael, because I do want to get to climate change. We'll go to climate change after this break. For now, let me thank Alan Aviles. I appreciate you coming on. I think you know that I was going to be critical, and I respect the fact that you've come on and explained yourself in the way that you have. So thank you very much. And we'll be back after the break, Michael, to talk about voter turnout and about global warming.